Good afternoon to all of you. I am deeply honored to be here. The theme of this conference, Youth, Happiness, Resilience, and Future Preparedness, speaks to the most urgent questions facing education today. And the vision of Viksit Bharat, a developed India, cannot be achieved without a developed education system. But what does a developed education system mean? Not more infrastructure, not more technology, certainly not more testing. It means an education that develops human beings, curious, autonomous, whole, resilient, happy. That is what I wish to explore with you today. The COVID crisis was not simply a storm that passed. It was an earthquake that revealed cracks already running beneath the foundation of schooling. Parents saw what their children were actually learning. Teachers were forced to abandon familiar routines, and many students simply disengaged. Research confirms that online learning often made things worse, exacerbating the tension between teacher control and genuine student agency. But the pandemic did not create these cracks. It merely illuminated what was already broken. A system stressed by increasing neurodivergence, designed for replication rather than adaptability, built on control rather than liberation. The international education system we inherit is not a natural phenomenon. It is a cultural artifact. Forged in the Industrial Revolution, its purpose was never to cultivate curious, autonomous, whole human beings. Its purpose was to maintain the status quo, to sort and rank individuals based on a premise of scarcity, and to prepare compliant workers for a world that no longer exists. This premise of scarcity, the idea that there is only so much success to go around, means knowledge is treated as a commodity to be dispensed by those in power. An autonomous learner who creates their own knowledge is a direct threat to that power structure. For a developed India, Viksit Bharat, the current model is not just inadequate, it is an obstacle. Before we can build anything new, we must return to the most basic questions we've stopped asking. 1. Why do we learn? Not to pass tests, to become curious, resilient, self-directed human beings who can navigate an uncertain future. 2. What is a human being? Not an empty vessel to be filled with information, but a sovereign creator capable of generating knowledge, meaning, and purpose. 3. What does a soul require to flourish? Safety, belonging, autonomy, meaning. These are not luxuries. These are the preconditions for genuine learning. For the youth of India, for any youth, anywhere, these questions are not abstract. They are urgently practical. From these 3 questions emerge 3 pillars of a new educational paradigm. First, curiosity-driven learning, answering why do we learn by recognizing that the desire to know is innate and must be nurtured, not suppressed. Second, nurturing autonomy, answering what is a human being by affirming that every learner is a sovereign creator deserving of self-determination. Third, head-heart coherence, answering what does a soul require by addressing the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual dimensions of the whole person. These 3 pillars rest on fundamental human principles: autonomy, openness, and whole being nourishment. Let me share what the research tells us about curiosity-driven learning. A meta-analysis of 36 studies found that inquiry-based learning significantly enhances critical thinking in science education. This study, published by Arifin and colleagues in 2025, Another study of over 46,000 students conducted by Liu and colleagues in 2025 found that student-driven instruction directly increases agency and curiosity. Curiosity is not just nice to have. It is linked to creativity and resilience. This echoed in two studies, one by Li and colleagues in 2023 and Eke in 2025. And here is something remarkable. Recent research by Polly and colleagues in 2024 found that university students with higher autistic traits showed more persistent exploration patterns on a curiosity-driven learning task when they were free to explore as they wanted. What this means is that differences we have consistently called disorders become strengths when the environment supports them. The key insight? When we trust learners to follow their questions, they rise to the challenge. For a developed India, this is not just good pedagogy. It is how we cultivate innovators. The second pillar is autonomy. Research from ESL Context, conducted by Ahmed and Hussein in 2024, shows that nurturing learner autonomy directly enhances both motivation and academic achievement. When learners have agency, they invest more deeply. Autonomy also equips learners with the metacognitive tools to navigate uncertainty, exactly what our rapidly changing world demands, according to a study published in 2024 by Karoubi and L.Malungu. And for neurodivergent learners, self-determination is not just beneficial, but essential, linked to positive educational outcomes, identity development, and quality of life based on a study published by Martino and colleagues in 2025. The third pillar is head-heart coherence, educating the whole being. This means addressing the physical dimension, embodied learning, sensory safety, the freedom to move. The mental dimension, cognitive challenge, inquiry, critical thinking. The emotional dimension, safety, belonging, emotional vocabulary, the capacity for regulation. And the spiritual dimension, meaning, purpose, connection, the space to ask big questions. Research confirms that whole school approaches focused on well-being have measured positive effects according to a study published by Goldberg and colleagues in 2022. And the neurodiversity paradigm reminds us that there is no one better or correct way to be, and all neurotypes are equally valued, as published by Aitken and Fletcher Watson in 2022. For youth happiness and resilience, this is foundational. You cannot have resilient young people who have never been allowed to feel safe. You cannot have happy young people who have never been allowed to ask what gives their life meaning. If we want this paradigm to become reality, we must transform how we prepare teachers. The teacher's role shifts from transmitter of information to facilitator of inquiry, from authority over students to co-learner with students, from fixing deficits to welcoming diversity. This requires teacher training that includes neurodiversity affirmative frameworks and the principle of universal design for learning. It requires helping teachers unlearn internal ableism and rediscover their fundamental vocation, not to transmit information, but to midwife the awakening of sovereign beings. For Viksit Bharat, investing in teacher preparation is not an expense. It is the most strategic investment possible. Learning environments must be redesigned physically, with flexible seating, adjustable lighting, quiet spaces, connection to nature. For neurodivergent learners, and really for all learners, sensory considerations are not accommodations, they are good design. Temporally, uninterrupted time for deep inquiry, flexible pacing, breaks when needed, The rigid timetable is a form of control that harms learning. Relationally, with cultures of belonging, explicit teaching about neurodiversity, genuine student voice in decisions, the key principle, designed for the margins. When we create environments that welcome the most vulnerable, the neurodivergent, the anxious, the different, everyone flourishes. This is not charity, it is wisdom. Finally, pedagogy itself must shift. We should start with questions, not answers. Assess not just the final product, but the quality of the inquiry process. Provide personalized, flexible support, and above all, practice what one scholar calls compassionate teaching, attentive love, presence, and the willingness to learn from each student what they need. Teach self-advocacy explicitly. Create space for students to explore and define their own identities, and recognize that for many young people who have experienced education as a site of correction and erasure, a teacher who sees them with warmth is transformative. This is how we cultivate happiness. This is how we build resilience. This is how we prepare youth for an uncertain future. Let me leave you with this. The fundamental mission of education is not to transmit information. That is what machines do. Our mission, if we choose to accept it, is to midwife the awakening of sovereign beings. Every child who enters our classrooms is a whole universe of possibility. Our job is to create the conditions for that universe to unfold. For Biksit Bharat, a developed India, this vision is not optional. A developed nation requires developed human beings, curious, autonomous, whole, resilient, happy. And developed human beings are not produced by systems of control and scarcity. They are nurtured by systems of trust and abundance. Curiosity, autonomy, wholeness, these are not Western concepts. They are universal human principles. Every child everywhere deserves to learn why they are here, what they are capable of, and what gives their life meaning. The building blocks are in the literature. The cracks in the old system are visible to anyone who looks. The need has never been more urgent. The question is whether we have the courage to build. Thank you for your patience in listening to this presentation. If what I've said resonates, I would love the opportunity to hear from you and address any questions or comments you may have. Please feel free to connect with me either through my LinkedIn profile or in the author website for my children's literature series. Thank you.